Hit me.
From Studio P in Sausalito, the home of the hit, it's time for...
Succotash.
Yes, Succotash, the Comedy Soundcast Soundcast featuring snippets from comedy.
Soundcasts.
And also interviews with comedians, comedian soundcasters, and other showbiz folk. And now, here's your host, internationally recognized Comedy Soundcast Soundcaster, Marc Hershon.
Hello, friend, and thank you, Bill Heywatt. 'Tis I, Marc Hershon, your every other weekly host of Succotash, the Comedy Soundcast Soundcast. And not only is this episode slated to actually drop on time for the first time in weeks, at least on my watch, my illustrious co-host Tyson Saner always clocks his epis in on time, but I am now safely ensconced in studio and my nerd nest in my new digs in Grass Valley, California. Still working on soundproofing and little bells and whistles to make this really come together, but it's a process, you know. Speaking of Tyson, which I was just doing, I'm hoping you caught his most recent installment, also known as episode 312, entitled Nothing in Common, in which he featured a trio of Comedy Soundcast entries which had little to do with one another other than the fact they were comedy-oriented. They were No Cover, live from Savage Henry Comedy Club, Gag on This Podcast, and In Bed with Nick and Megan. I said were, but may as well have said are, since you can still avail yourself of said episode, fetchable at Apple or Google Podcasts, Stitcher, SoundCloud, YouTube, Amazon Music, Audible, Podchaser, Podbay, and on our own humble little home site at succotashshow.com, where you can avail yourself of over 11 years of episodes of this podcast, or Soundcast as we prefer to say. This week I've pulled together 4 shows to clip, all under a common theme. I'm calling this episode Let's All Go to the Movies, because I've selected a quartet of comedy-oriented movie review shows. In the past, we featured such soundcasts as How Did This Get Made and the Film Threat podcast with friend of the show Chris Gore. I ventured out into the Soundcastiverse and found shows we've not featured yet, which means you'll be hearing snippets from But Is It Good?, Forever Movie Boys, Rotten Tomatoes is Wrong, and They're Just Movies. In addition, we're brought to you this week by Henderson's Pants' wildly appropriate Hooray for Hollywood slacks. Plus, we get back into sharing your social media handles when I dip into the tweet sack a little later in the show. For now, though, let's hit those clips.
Wait a minute. Hear this.
I'm going to start off with the soundcast called They're Just Movies, because they did a review recently of Lightyear, that Buzz Lightyear movie, that sort of spin-off of Toy Story, which I've not seen yet, so I was pretty curious. This soundcast is hosted by a, quote, small group of nerds, unquote, as they call themselves, which includes Riley Murdoch, David Gautier, and James Stribe. Their collective reviews around the film, featuring a different flavor of Buzz Lightyear than we've seen in the Toy Story movies, are a little light on the kudos, I must say, but they don't out and out trash the film. To put a positive spin on their take, they start out talking about what they liked about it.
David, what'd you like about the movie? You gave it the highest rating out of all of us.
And I'll stand by that for now. I think what I like the most about this movie is I've always wanted a Pixar movie that kind of does like a straight-faced fantasy or sci-fi thing. And that's what this does. It's not like on its surface a kid's movie. It's like, hey, it's a space adventure, and they're taking the content fairly seriously. I think that
Well, yeah, fairly.
I think that they fail to. They kind of try and straddle like an adventure that would appeal to grown-ups and then the kid's story, and they kind of land somewhere in the middle in a weird middling zone. But I like that it's not like making fun of sci-fi movies. Like it's like a real sci-fi movie. Mm-hmm. So that's one thing I liked.
I was like pretty stoked for this movie because I don't know. I feel like I have watched the Toy Story movies a million times with my kid now, and I think you and I were talking about this a while ago, David. How like I'm realizing that these movies they're just solid.
Phenomenal.
They make me cry every time at the end now.
Yep.
It's crazy. And they are just, they're so good. So I was like super excited to see the spinoff, and it seemed like really influenced by, Star Wars and kind of like a more gritty, like grounded sci-fi type of thing, maybe. Okay, not gritty and grounded as in realistic, but sort of like feels lived in a little bit,
like Star Wars.
Yeah, and I think they delivered on some of the stuff that I thought they would. I mean, the ship design and the stuff looks really good.
Yeah.
It's got that kind of like used Star Wars look a bit. The animation obviously is like
It's pretty stellar.
super good.
Man, the material technology they have now, like the way Socks looks, like his little velvet fur, I was like,
Yeah.
I can feel it with my eyes.
Yeah, and that was the other like really good thing for me about the movie was just Socks. I feel like it takes you a little bit to kind of warm up to the robot.
you're
You're
just
like,
oh, it's the
okay, yeah,
Disney
it's a sassy,
sidekick,
it's a funny, sarcastic robot or whatever. But there are like some genuinely funny moments, like
Give me some of them.
like when he shoots out the dart and you're just like not expecting it. You're just like, was that for me? And
have
he's like, I gave you 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he's like beep boop beep boop beep boop beep. I don't know. There are just like a lot of moments, and he like when they're like, Socks, can you light the way? And he's like, all the little noises he makes little robot noises, but it's just that voice actor Peter Sohn just making the noises. And then one of them is a laser for his like makes a laser with his eyes, and he's like chasing it.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Anyways, I thought there were funny moments.
Yep.
But unfortunately, for every funny moment, it was like there was another moment that was supposed to be funny that was not.
I didn't find there was too many moments with Socks that didn't land, but with the other characters.
Oh, not with Socks, just with the
other
movie
ones.
in general, yeah.
Yeah.
Do you have to say something else you like about it, Linus?
My kids enjoyed it.
Yeah, they killed in the theater I was in. I went on like a Sunday matinee, and there was probably like 40, 50 kids, and they loved it. But the kids are dumb, so...
Yeah. I mean, the thing is, and it's hard for me to reconcile that with my overall takeaway, which is that I was lied to within the first 3 seconds of the movie starting.
Oh.
I just do not believe that that's the movie Andy watched.
Right.
Yeah.
And went out and got a Buzz Lightyear doll. Like the beginning of the movie is pretty adult paced.
Right.
It's really slow moving compared to especially more modern kids movies. Like I'm especially reminded of that what is it, the Mitchells versus the Machines or whatever, with that really frenetic TikTok pace of editing. This I really didn't feel that way about. I also just I can't ignore how utterly helpless Buzz is. I wanted to keep track by the time it happened 3 or 4 times of how many times Buzz needed to be rescued in this movie. He's a very unconventional Space Marine hero. And I couldn't figure out, again, retcons. Why does Toy Buzz have so much swagger if he's not a cartoonishly badass Space Marine?
To infinity and beyond.
Well, there's a taste of They're Just Movies, taken from an episode that dropped about half a month ago. They've had several more since then, and plenty more back in their archives. You can find the show anywhere you access your finer soundcasts, or just wander over to our home site, succotashshow.com, and click on the title of their show, They're Just Movies. In the blog entry for this episode, you will be whisked in extreme comfort to their home site. A trio of Australian guys host the Forever Movie Boys Soundcast. The funny thing is that there are 3 of them, but the logo for their show only features 2 caricatures, although there is a kernel of popcorn hovering between the other 2, so maybe that's the 3rd guy? And as is often the case since we started doing Succotash 11 and a half years ago, no trace of any names for the hosts, at least not on the web. Maybe they mentioned it during the show, but I somehow missed it. Anyway, in advance of them wanting to catch the new Elvis movie by Baz Luhrmann, they treated themselves to a bit of culty classic Elvis the week before it opened called Bubba Hotep, which I think is a great movie, but it seems they didn't quite dig it.
It's almost like the elevator pitch is better than than fleshing out the film itself. You know what I mean? It's one of those things. It's like
yeah.
It's like
it's a Reddit thread.
Exactly, it's a Reddit thread. It's like you could totally stumble across a premise like this in a fucking Reddit thread, and whatever your imagination conjures up, this like half movie that your imagination thinks up is probably going to be better than anything that gets realized, because the thing that gets realized has to fill out at least 90 minutes, and maybe there isn't 90 minutes of an idea here. You know, like, it's kind of how I feel about the movie, because there's so much stuff in there that could work a lot better, but it just doesn't. Like, I don't feel like the staff at the old people's home at all fleshed out, really, and they play almost no part in the direction of things.
No.
They're almost not even there.
Yeah, they're
the
practically
majority
not.
of the time. There's
Reggie
old people
fucking
dying
pops
left
up.
and right.
Yeah,
We love Reggie.
we love Reggie, but like he pops up for like a line, and then I think he's in some of the background scenes as the story kind of progresses. But like the way he delivers that line to the nurse when she's talking about the electricity like kind of going off in that room. It seems almost sinister. It almost seems like he kind of knows what's going on, but it's just like Reggie doing like a creepy delivery or something for no reason, or just being an asshole, I guess is the character.
Yeah, being the dick boss.
Yeah. But it just doesn't really like. That's it, you know. Like there's no the fact that Ozzie Davison and Elvis fucking or like JFK and Elvis just run rampant in like the last act of the film, basically all over the grounds of the old people's home, unimpeded, and just fight this fucking mummy. It just feels kind of like a disappointing, you know, that there's no other conflict that like the staff present or anything like that in the way of that goal. Like there's even a part where they're like suiting up near the end, and they're getting all their shit ready. Elvis pulls out his fucking, I think he's stolen a bunch of shit, and he literally says like, "Oh yeah, I got this from like the locked." The place, like the lock.
I just picked the lock.
I just picked the lock, and it's like maybe we could have seen that, and we could have had like a nice tense scene of him doing that. Like why didn't we get to see?
I thought
something?
the exact same thing.
Yeah.
I was like, oh wow, we're just jumping time here, and they're throwing everything they've collected on the bed.
Exactly.
Why?
Yeah.
Like I was like, why don't we get to see any of the gatherings? It's so it's very, I don't know, lazy might not be the right word, but it definitely feels like that kind of.
Well, I just think this is what I mean. What I said earlier
The
about
cheapness of it.
The cheapness, exactly. It's like restrained in a sense by its budget. Like it didn't quite know how to meet its premise with like the budget that was afforded it. And I don't know how it plays out in the short story. So it could be different. Like it could be a little bit more dramatic, but it could be the same. It could be like an incredibly faithful adaptation of just not a very good short story. You know.
I did kind of with the premise. Knowing that it was just like Elvis and JFK fight a mummy, I kind of was thinking it would go like Home Alone-y with it, and because they're so old. I was like, because they're so old, how do they fight a mummy? And it turns out that they just fight the mummy and light it on fire, which
Twice.
I was disappointed in. I was very disappointed in, but I really expected them to like lay traps throughout the old folks' home to try and like. Trick the mummy or something like that.
Well, I thought that, like the fact that the climax culminates in Bruce Campbell lighting it on fire once, and then it getting back up and fighting him, and then him lighting it on fire again, and then like killing it, like lighting it on fire enough to release the souls inside it or something is like.
Yeah, I was like, I don't get that.
No, it's
I don't
like
understand why
it feels kind of lazy.
Fire is the one,
and I honestly thought
they clarify it earlier. It's in the Book of Souls.
That's the Forever Movie Boys Soundcast. Always interesting to get the take of movies from audiences down under. Check them out wherever fine soundcasts are streamed and or downloaded. In the midst of all this movie hoopla, it seems the perfect time to slip into a pair of hooray for Hollywood pants, doesn't it? Transport us, Bill Heywatt.
Well, hello, friends. Bill Heywatt here. You know, as the saying goes, fame is fleeting, but it doesn't have to be. When you become well known for wearing Henderson's spiffy new Hooray for Hollywood slacks, you'll be doing a star turn every time you hit the town in these ultra-modern, ultra-cool pants because they are custom-fitted, but not customized to your contours. Oh, my goodness, no. Hooray for Hollywood slacks, designed for both men and women, have been made to duplicate the look of some of the silver screen's most famous butts and groins. Imagine having your behind mistaken from behind for Cary Grant or Charlize Theron or the daring derriere of Scarlett Johansson or Bradley Cooper. Even the spectacular package of Milton Berle, Forrest Tucker, or John Hamm. It's a case of mistaken identity that you'll be happy to to have. Not to mention that now, as you bump and grind your way down the street, it will be like being on your very own personal Walk of Fame. Originally designed for Shia LaBeouf, most residents of Reseda and the Beverly Hills Police Stalkers Task Force, Henderson's Hooray for Hollywood pants are available wherever the beautiful people are afraid to shop. Plus in Kardashian sizes by special order only. That's Henderson's, makers of fine leggings and butt huggers since 1867. And now back to Succotash.
Our third movie review-related comedy soundcast is called But Is It Good? No question mark on that title if you were wondering. And it's hosted by Hunter Callahan and Zach Olson. We're just going to pop back a couple of weeks when the host welcomed guest Robert Clough in to discuss Ghostbusters Afterlife, the way too long anticipated sequel to the second Ghostbusters movie. They all kind of dug it, but there were some issues.
The only gripe I have with this movie, and it's not even a gripe, it's like, in a movie like this, it's really easy to like suspend disbelief. But this is a very common theme in things like Star Wars, even like the original, but also in the new one, like with Rey and Luke. There's they have a name for them in film. It's like the Mary Sue or something like that, or whatever, where it's like they just sort of know how to do everything.
Okay, so
that's my only gripe
is that Phoebe knows how to.
Not even Phoebe. Phoebe, I can buy because like she is a certified genius, and like Egon's kind of like coaching her.
Oh, but like, podcast when he knows how to do the
podcast can do the trap all of a sudden,
he just knew.
And then Trevor, like not only can drive but like knows how to work the like. I was just like that's kind of my only gripe where I was like, okay, all right, I guess we're in this. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
right.
But again, like that doesn't bring the movie down for me. I eventually was like, okay, they can do it. Sure.
I had one gripe, and that was when Phoebe's talked about her grandfather died of a heart attack. That was the whole thing. Was they knew they were going to the house because he died of a heart attack. Mm-hmm. I don't need to know he died of a heart attack. I mean, when you see movies like Jurassic Park and somebody gets splashed by the dinosaur, stomped by the dinosaur. I mean, I know how he died. He died because of a dinosaur. He died. Yeah. Spengler died because he was caught by one of those ghosts, and it grabbed him just like it did Sigourney Weaver's character in the original Ghostbusters.
So that
Dana.
I was confused because so he did die from the ghost. Like the ghost does kill him. Okay. Yeah. All right. So, but that even goes back to show that like whatever information they're getting from their mom, and perhaps she's getting from someone else, isn't the truth.
Right.
Is this like, because I guess they just found him there. I guess
supposedly
because. The cold open ends with him in his chair and the little meter underneath the chair, and it's like his body, but he doesn't look like he's been wounded. He's just sort of there. So I guess they would assume a heart attack.
Yeah. And did you catch the reference when he died?
Probably not.
So they have these little devices they carry around. They're ghost detectors. They call them something else. Yeah. Well, the ghost detector laying at his feet that he was using to see if the ghost was around, all of a sudden starts lighting up.
Yeah, because it's him. Right?
And then you see Phoebe using that same device, and when she's in her room, that device starts lighting up, and it's because he's in there as the ghost now.
Yeah, that's I feel like when I saw it at the beginning, I was like, I guess there's something happening. When it happened in Phoebe's room, I realized I said, okay, that's Spengler. Like I got that pretty quick.
Yeah.
But anyway, so we find the car. That's what it was. Trevor just fixes the car.
Well, he almost fixes the car, and
That's
then
true. And then
Egon,
does the little wire.
Right.
But I was kind of like, is he?
What does he know?
I'm almost 30, and I can't fix the car.
Yeah.
right.
So I mean, I'm not saying he couldn't have. It just seemed a little random, where he was like, I can all of a sudden fix this like 60s Cadillac, because it was old in the first movie, wasn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. So that's been sitting there for God knows how long.
Right.
That's my only gripe.
See, that was more consistent with Dan Aykroyd's character, Ray. He was into cars. And all these reflect Dan Aykroyd in real life. He was into the paranormal stuff. He's into the cars. And he has all these little quirky things that he says. And it's that dry wit that kind of drives a lot of the Ghostbuster movies.
So let me ask you, and then we can move on. We have Phoebe, Trevor, podcast, and then at the end we have Lucky. That's the girl's name.
We have
right?
Lucky, yes.
So if you had to correlate those four to the original Ghostbusters, who's who? So Phoebe's Spangler.
Phoebe,
obviously.
yeah, obviously. Then I would say Trevor's Ray.
Okay.
I mean, we kind of established that. The other ones. Bill Murray's character, he was just a wise ass, and he was the only like womanizer of the group, where he was always pursuing girls.
Well, he was talking to Gozer. He's like, "We could have been a power couple."
Yes. Oh, fantastic line too. Oh yeah.
So that would be like I would say probably podcast. He was the goofy one, maybe.
We're giving you some very good movie barometers here in this episode. Check out But Is It Good the next time you're thinking about catching something at the movies. When you're gambling, it's usually a good idea to cover your bets. I get the feeling that's what's going on with our last show, which is called Rotten Tomatoes is Wrong. That's because it's a soundcast that's also produced in conjunction with Rotten Tomatoes itself. According to the show's description, hosts Jacqueline Coley and Mark Ellis go deep and settle the score with some of the most beloved and despised movies and TV shows ever made. Helping them tackle an overview of all 6 Jurassic Park movies is actor Andrew Guy.
Speaking of chaos, our guest today, just a wonderful human being, start to finish, who is in not one but 2 movies coming out right now, and they're about to make the film festival rounds. A Bogota Trip and Always Lola are the movies that are being starred in by Andrew Guy. Andrew, I've also seen you worldwide announcing esports. You occasionally are next to me when we're talking movie trivia with the Schmodown, and now you're here talking about Jurassic Park. You and I got to see Dominion together, and we enjoyed a hearty bucket of popcorn.
Yeah. Thanks for having me, guys. And yes, we did watch Dominion together, and it was interesting because I think we came out with one feeling of the movie, and then we ran into a group of friends who had the polar opposite feeling of said movie. So it'll be fun to kind of break it down and see where it ends up on the tomato meter. As you said, it's dropped already a decent amount just in the next few days, or I guess in the last few days. So I'm excited to keep watching the trajectory.
And this is why Jacqueline knows this as well as anyone. When I see a movie in a theater, I want to leave. I want to be by myself with my own thoughts. I don't want to run into a gaggle of friends who's going to try to sway me in one direction or the other. Jacqueline, are you a big reviewer of movies? As soon as you leave the theater, are you looking for the gaggle, or are you trying to avoid the gaggle?
Depends on the movie theater, depends on the gaggle. Actually, it really depends on the gaggle. Like, there are certain people who I value their opinions, but I also work at Rotten Tomatoes where people give it very freely. So you kind of have to have a little bit of an energy diet on whose opinion you let matter. And I will say that it's a very short list, but yeah, if I see Justin Chang after a movie, I'd be interested to see what he has to say about it. I'd be equally as interested to hear what you have to say about it. But certain gaggles at our press screenings,
yeah, just want to stay away from it.
Very good way to put
entirely.
it.
I mean, I don't know who gave this rumor that I enjoy people in all forms. I'm much more of a particular sampling of the human race.
Well, we all have
energies.
Dogs. We all have dogs, and dogs.
Cool.
More than anything else, remind me of the dinosaurs now in Jurassic Park. We're going to get into that and some of the issues that I have with Fallen Kingdom and Dominion. We're not going to spoil Dominion, by the way. I want everybody to know that because the movie just came out this past weekend. We're not going to spoil Dominion. We might give some light plot points, but nothing too in-depth. If you've not yet seen the movie, you can still continue to listen to the episode. So, Andrew, I'm going to start with you really quick. You heard my ranking as far as the tomato meter goes of Jurassic Park films, start to finish, 1 through 6. I'm just going to ask you if you agree. Is Rotten Tomatoes right or is Rotten Tomatoes wrong about Jurassic Park being number 1 and then Fallen Kingdom being number 6?
I love to say it, but I believe Rotten Tomatoes is wrong when it comes to this list of 6 that we have. I mean, the top of it, number 1, I don't think anyone's ever going to argue that, but I think it does fall apart just a little bit 2 through 6.
Okay, Jacqueline Coley, is Rotten Tomatoes wrong about their tomato meter ranking?
I mean, in the senses, that's what people said at the time. Obviously not. It's so weird with rankings to say if it's wrong. I'll say it feels right. How about that? It feels right. Because that's what it does. It feels right. Like, I can't argue one way or the other because I think after 1 or 2, the bar is low and I don't think anybody met it. We have podcast episodes to back me up on that.
Yeah, but some met it more than others. So I'm going to say Rotten Tomatoes is wrong about the rankings. Andrew has a great point. I think we all know it's going to be number one on all of our lists. But then from there, 2 through 6, the water's going to get a little choppy.
Now, that clip of Rotten Tomatoes is wrong I grabbed from the top of the show. So if you really want to hear them bore down on the Jurassic franchise, you're going to want to download the whole episode. You can pick up the show pretty much everywhere. Them's the clips, but we're not quite done. Yeah, that's right, Tweety. It's Tweet Sack time. I'm going to reel off the handles of some of the fine folks who've kindly mentioned our handle at Succotash Show in their socials in the past couple of weeks, and maybe there's a few extra mentions as well. Here we go. Hughes Lopez 97, Corey Lamont Berry, Zombie Bacterium, The Jock Doc Podcast, Phil Lernis, Let's Chat Podcast, The Talking Dicks, Eric Furness, The D-Head Factor, Different Way Games, Fascination Street, Misfit Scully, Married Crazy and Podcasts, Salty Language Pod, Renee Cumberland, Cheatonic Games, Stand Up Dads Podcast, Big Nick J, I Shake My Head with Lisa and Sam, Robert Santiago, Julie Waddell, Helper, Hal Lublin, Abner Sir, Copin with Comic, Kevin Gooty, Monster Party, Kate Used to Tweet About Libraries, and Chloe Kronk. Then over on SoundCloud, there's G Mafia Report, Brandy, James Campos, Sylvia Foreman, Kimmy's Playlist, and Shirley started following us over there as well. So thanks, guys. See what happens when I get behind on those? There's so many to read. Thanks, everybody. If you'd like to get in on that number and have me read your name or social media handle, just toss our @Succotash Show handle into your socials, and if I see it, we'll plug you here. We have reached the end of our designated time together for this week. Aww. Yeah. Tyson Saner returns next week in this very same feed to bring you Succotash episode 314. Most likely clips, but it could be a chat or maybe a mixed combo plate special. Who knows? If you'd like to check out my Vulture Soundcast reviews, the column I contribute to has been renamed This Month in Comedy Podcasts, and my June one is still up. I reviewed a recent entry from our old pals Hal Lublin and Mark Gagliardi from their We Got This Soundcast, and that's over at vulture.com. Other than that, if you find a discarded cell phone in the street and you pick it up, then it rings, you answer it, say hello, and a voice at the other end asks if you've been listening to anything good lately, won't you please pass the succotash?
You've been listening to Succotash, the Comedy Soundcast Soundcast, with your host, Marc Hershon. Brought to you by Henderson's Pants and...
Imagine your company's name right here.
Rate us and review us at Apple and Google Podcasts. Find us on the web at succotashshow.com, on Stitcher, on iHeartRadio, on YouTube,
on SoundCloud,
and wherever
fine soundcasts are streamed and or downloaded.
Follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Succotash Show. Like us on Facebook. Email us at marc@succotashshow.com. Or call into the Succotash Skype line at our toll-call number, 818-921-7212.
That number again is 818-921-7212.
You can also upload clips from your favorite comedy soundcasts directly to us using our direct upload link at hightail.com/u/succotash. Succotash is produced and engineered by Joe Paulino through the auspices of Studio P Sausalito, the home of the hit. Our hosts are Marc Hershon and Tyson Saner. Our musical director is
Scott Carvey.
Our booth assistant is
Kenny Durges.
Succotash is executive produced by Marc Hershon. Until next time, I'm your loyal booth announcer, Bill Heywatt, reminding you to please pass the Succotash. Goodbye. This has been a Succotash Patch production.